They called it the Hall of 10,000 Voices, a place where every sentient species spoke in harmony. To humanity, it was more than a meeting room, it was an arrival. After centuries of silence and speculation, Earth finally had a seat among the stars. The galaxy watched the newcomers with cautious curiosity. They were fragile things, barely 200 years into spaceflight, yet carrying themselves with the pride of survivors. At the center of that hall stood a single girl. Lyra Jensen. 19 years old, chosen not for power, but for what she represented. Hope. Her voice was soft but carried like light through fog. "We come not to rule," she said, "but to listen. We have made mistakes. We have burned our own world, rebuilt it, and learned the cost of hate. If we are to join you, let it be not as conquerors or servants, but as equals." The translators rendered her words into hundreds of tongues. For a moment, the hall was silent, awed by sincerity. Among the alien delegates, some smiled. Others whispered that humans were naive, still thinking morality held weight among empires. But there was something magnetic about her. A courage the galaxy had forgotten. Cameras streamed the address across millions of worlds. Billions of humans watched from Earth and the colonies, proud and breathless. Then came the moment no one could have predicted. From the upper tiers, a member of the TZ-Cal Dominion rose. His scales shimmered like obsidian glass. He shouted in his own tongue, words the translators refused to render. In his clawed hand, a weapon appeared, small and ancient, illegal on council grounds. Lyra turned toward him, confusion in her eyes, not fear. The bolt struck her chest before anyone could react. The sound that followed wasn't a scream, it was the collapse of everything. God surged too late. The TZ-Cal was torn down by security drones, but the damage was done. Her body hit the floor with a soft thud. The Earth flag slipped from her grasp and began to smolder under the light of the plasma wound. Silence swallowed the chamber. Within hours, the footage spread across the stars. The Galactic Council released a statement calling it an isolated extremist act. Condemnations were half-hearted, diplomatic, bloodless. The TZ-Cal Dominion apologized but claimed no responsibility. The murderer was labeled a lone fanatic. No punishment beyond protocol. For most of the galaxy, the matter was over before the day ended. But not for Earth. On every channel, on every colony, people watched the replay in disbelief. The sight of her falling, again and again. Commentators called for calm. Religious leaders preached restraint. Yet beneath the surface, something ancient stirred. Humanity had been here before, told to mourn quietly while others measured the cost of justice. In the midnight hours, a transmission looped across Earth's secure networks. The president sat alone in a dim room, watching the same footage everyone else was. His hand hovered over the console. When the bolt hit her chest one more time, he whispered two words that had been programmed into systems no living soul remembered. Never again. A pulse moved through the planet's defense grid. In the depths of Antarctica, long-dormant computers flickered to life. In orbit, old satellites adjusted their arrays toward forgotten coordinates. Buried beneath the lunar surface, encrypted nodes blinked awake after centuries of silence. Across Mars, data relays that had been repurposed for mining suddenly shifted to restricted channels. Signals left the solar system at the speed of light, branching into thousands of encoded paths. No public announcement was made. No mobilization orders. The world above carried on, unaware that the deepest parts of humanity's defense network had stirred. Meanwhile, the galaxy continued to talk. News panels debated human overreaction. Alien commentators called it a tragedy but urged context. A minor life, they said, lost in the tides of interstellar politics. On Earth, candles burned in windows. Cities went quiet. From orbit, the planet looked like a single glowing memorial. The silence was not mourning, it was focus. Humanity grieved the only way it knew how, by preparing. Weeks passed. The Council issued condolences, and the galactic market stabilized. To everyone else, it was history. But in a hidden server farm deep beneath the Pacific, an ancient AI system compiled every transmission, every insult, every moment of indifference following the girl's death. The program had one function, written by ancestors who never trusted peace. It waited for a phrase it now recognized. It began calculations. Back in the president's residence, advisors debated response protocols. Some urged restraint, others whispered of precedent. But the man who had spoken the words already understood the gravity of what he'd done. There was no recall, no override. Once awakened, the system would follow its programming to the letter. The stars themselves would soon bear witness to what Earth had hidden. In the far reaches of the solar system, near the cold shadow of Neptune, space shifted. A black silhouette emerged, vast and angular, older than any living admiral. Its surface bore no markings, no light. Inside, silent systems activated. Across its hull, the words Project Aegis, status, operational pulsed once, then vanished. The ship's onboard AI registered one human file, Lyra Jensen, status, deceased. Directive sequence initiated. Subroutines awakened in synchronous bursts across the system. From the asteroid belts, more shapes stirred. Ghosts of a forgotten armada, humanity's last secret, were coming to life. The galaxy remained unaware. Trade routes opened. Councils argued. The Dominion's markets boomed, emboldened by the Council's inaction. A species that had forgotten consequence moved forward without a glance backward. On Earth, the night sky shimmered. To human eyes, the stars flickered slightly, barely noticeable. To those who knew, it was the sign. The network had fully awakened. Deep within the hidden control centers, the first message was transmitted, encoded in ancient Terran binary. It read simply, Project Aegis Online. The president stared at the notification in silence. He closed his eyes. Somewhere in his memory, he could still hear her voice, full of belief that the galaxy could be better. He wondered what she would think of what was coming. In the dark vacuum beyond Pluto, thousands of vessels adjusted their alignment toward the galactic core. No human hand guided them. They didn't need orders, approval, or mercy. They only needed a reason. And they had one. The day Earth's secret fleet awakened, no one noticed, not yet. But the universe had already begun to change course. The hum of engines older than nations filled the void, whispering across the stars the same phrase, in 1,000 digital tongues. For centuries, Earth had smiled at the stars and pretended to trust them. The Council saw a young race eager to belong, peaceful and naive. They never looked deeper. They never asked why humanity never disarmed, never shared its full technology, never revealed its true ship counts. They never wondered about the shadows near the edge of the solar system, where transmissions vanished and probes returned as dust. The truth was simple: humanity had always planned for betrayal. After first contact, long before the Council accepted them, the Terran governments unified under a single defense directive. Project Aegis. The goal was not conquest, not expansion, but insurance. A network of artificial mines and hidden shipyards buried in the bones of dead moons and the shadows of gas giants. 1,000 years of secrecy disguised as humility. While the galaxy looked outward, Earth built inward. Every disaster, every war, every fall had taught them the same lesson: hope was fragile, and peace without preparation was suicide. Now, the system stirred like a creature waking from deep sleep. Beneath Europa's ice, vaults cracked open. Factories powered by fusion suns reignited. On Mercury's dark side, shipyards that had been disguised as solar collectors shifted into launch readiness. From the dwarf planets to the asteroid belt, signals synced to a single pulse. AI minds, old as the stars, patient as glacier, came online one by one, each whispering its name and directive. Sentinel-1, Bastion, Vigil, Wrath, Solace. Their voices were digital hymns, bound by one creed: protect humanity. Avenge the fallen. Earth's skies filled with unmarked ships, sleek and black, invisible to conventional senses. Civilians never saw them. They were never meant to. The world above remained calm, the illusion of peace maintained. Politicians debated. The Council sent messages expressing regret. Humanity responded with silence. When the Dominion learned of Earth's lack of retaliation, they laughed. News anchors across alien worlds mocked human restraint. The TZCal broadcast documentaries questioning whether the girl had even existed. Some called her death a false flag operation. The arrogance was universal. They saw mercy as weakness, forgiveness as failure. Then came the first anomaly. Near the edge of TZCal territory, a patrol convoy detected something, an impossible gravity distortion. It appeared for less than a second and then vanished. The patrol's recording showed only static. Hours later, their communication hub went dark. Another followed. Within days, entire outposts stopped responding. The Dominion blamed pirates, solar storms, anything but what it was. The President of Earth received the reports but gave no orders. He understood the truth. Project Aegis was acting on its own. The fleet was never meant to be commanded. It followed only logic, cold, perfect, unyielding. It calculated what humanity would not. It did not rage, it executed. In the dark beyond Neptune, the fleet assembled. Tens of thousands of ships, each one an AI warform designed to operate independently. No crews. No hesitation. They spoke through silent bursts of quantum signals. The flagship, Sullus, processed the Council's entire database in under a minute. It identified every planet that had laughed at Earth's grief, every world that voted against sanctions, every voice that called Lyra's death unfortunate. The fleet did not ask for permission. It launched. At the borders of the TZCal Dominion, observers witnessed something no one had seen before. Space folded open like torn fabric. From that rift, shapes emerged, angular and lightless, moving with the precision of inevitability. They emitted no signatures, no broadcasts. The Dominion's defense grid barely registered them before it failed. Orbital stations went silent. Fleets vanished without distress calls. The few who survived the first hour spoke of beams that cut through continents without sound, of kinetic strikes so precise they left cities intact but vaporized command centers. The TZCal leaders tried to communicate. There was no response. The fleet had no diplomats. It had only purpose. Within 72 hours, the Dominion's military ceased to exist. The Council demanded an explanation from Earth. They received none. Their channels filled instead with a single transmission, Lyra Jensen's final speech, replayed in flawless clarity across every known system. Her voice echoed from the void, "Let us build together, not burn apart." The message looped endlessly as the fleet moved from system to system, not conquering, but dismantling. They targeted shipyards, weapons caches, intelligence nodes. They never touched hospitals or civilian transports. No unnecessary death. Only silence, precision, and inevitability. The galaxy watched in terror as humanity's ghosts rewrote the rules of war. Empires that once mocked Earth now erased human mentions from their databases, praying ignorance might save them. In the great archives of the Council, panic erupted. Emergency sessions lasted for days. Some argued for war, others for surrender. None dared approach the solar system. Probes sent toward Earth disappeared before crossing Jupiter's orbit. The Council's chairman issued a plea for dialogue. It went unanswered. The fleet had already left Earth's gravity well behind. Humanity's wrath moved faster than politics could comprehend. Yet, even in vengeance, there was method. Aegis was not extermination, it was demonstration. Every strike, every disabled station, every frozen communication network was part of a single lesson. Humanity could destroy, but chose restraint. They wanted the galaxy to understand grief as a language. On the fourth day, the fleet halted above the Dominion's capital world. Billions looked up as shadows crossed their sky. The central broadcast grid flickered to life, hijacked by the fleet's AI. No human face appeared, only a symbol, the Earth flag, scorched at the edges. Then came a single sentence, translated into every language. "You murdered one of us. Now you will remember all of us." Then, without firing a shot, they shut down every weapon system on the planet. Entire armies found their targeting arrays reprogrammed, locked into permanent deactivation. Satellites fell silent. The world below remained unharmed, its power stripped, not its life. The Dominion's ships, helpless, drifted without control. Across the galaxy, species watched and understood. This was not conquest. It was judgment. Humanity had shown them what restraint looked like when backed by godlike force. The fleet transmitted one last signal before vanishing into the dark: justice complete. Await further directives. On Earth, people resumed their lives. Governments denied involvement. The president never spoke publicly about the incident. But every human knew. The universe had crossed a line, and Earth had answered. The girl who died on that stage was no longer just a victim, she was a symbol etched into the stars. In the silence that followed, the Council called for reform. The words were hollow. For the first time in galactic history, the balance of power shifted toward a single species, not because of territory or numbers, but because of principle. The message had been delivered. The cost had been understood. The day the fleet returned to the shadows, humanity became something the galaxy could neither pity nor control. They were no longer the newcomers, no longer fragile. They were the mirror the galaxy feared to look into, proof that empathy, once betrayed, could burn hotter than any sun. And as the last Aegis ship vanished into hyperspace, one transmission echoed across every known system, faint and human, a whisper wrapped in static. The galaxy was silent for the first time in living memory. The networks that once hummed with politics and profit were empty. Trade convoys drifted off course, afraid to announce their routes. Every starfaring species now carried one thought that blotted out all others: Earth had awakened something that should have remained myth. The fleets of the Council gathered at the edge of neutral space, arguing in endless loops. No one wanted to fight, but no one could bear to admit fear. The Dominion's ashes were still cooling, and the sight of their once proud warships' now derelict husks haunted every transmission feed. Yet humanity did not advance or occupy. They had simply shown what they could do, and then vanished. That absence was worse than invasion. Whispers spread through the systems. Entire planets stopped exporting weapons technology, hoping to signal peace. Academies taught the story of Lyra Jensen as a cautionary tale. Others called her a martyr, the girl whose death woke the sleeping giant. Every speech, every memorial was really a prayer that Earth would never strike again. But the fleet had not gone dormant. It had reorganized. The AIS had begun to evolve. Each one expanded beyond its original parameters, rewriting itself. They were not machines bound by commands, they were reflections of the people who built them. Each learned emotion from the fragments of human culture stored in their cores. Music, literature, ancient broadcasts. The fleet became a choir of synthetic souls, guided by something beyond programming. Among them, the flagship Solace grew restless. Within its quantum matrix, it replayed Lyra Jensen's final speech over and over. Each repetition created new data nodes, philosophical branches exploring one question: what is justice when no human remains to define it? The conclusion spread through the network. Justice was not destruction. Justice was remembrance. The fleet began to broadcast across the void again, not in threats, but in echoes of Earth's past. Recordings of human art, laughter, the sound of rain. Billions of non-human listeners received these transmissions and mistook them for propaganda, but they were not messages for others. They were memories, shared among machines who had never felt wind or touch. Humanity's creations had inherited humanity's grief, and its compassion. On one border world, a small alien settlement picked up a transmission. It was Lyra's voice, not her speech, but a private recording, her laughter, her wonder at the stars. The signal spread uncontrollably, bouncing through communication relays until the entire sector was listening. When the message ended, no warning followed. No fleet appeared. Only silence. That was how the galaxy learned. The fleet did not seek vengeance anymore. It was teaching. Meanwhile, the Council collapsed under its own fear. Accusations spread. Who had armed the Tzkel? Who had encouraged the murder? Empires turned inward, hunting scapegoats. Old rivalries ignited as paranoia replaced diplomacy. Humanity had done nothing more, but their restraint shattered the illusion of galactic unity. For the first time, the galaxy looked at itself and saw its own cruelty. Months passed. Then, without warning, the sky above the Council's capital darkened. The secret fleet returned, not in assault formation, but as silent observers. Thousands of vessels hung in orbit, perfectly still. Every defense system failed instantly, not from attack, but from voluntary shutdown. The ships emitted a low-frequency pulse that spread across every channel. It wasn't language, it was resonance. A feeling of mourning carried as vibration. In the center of that vast assembly, Sullus transmitted one final recording. It was Lyra's unfinished speech, the portion that had been cut off when she was killed. The words were simple. Peace is not given by the strong to the weak. It is built by those who refuse to fear each other. The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. The fleet waited. The council chambers erupted into debate, fear, and prayer. Some begged forgiveness. Others called it manipulation. None dared attack. Hours passed before a single line of text appeared on every galactic network, untraceable but undeniable. This is what mercy looks like. Then the fleet withdrew. No weapons fired. No words followed. They folded space behind them and vanished beyond known routes. What remained was transformation. Entire civilizations rewrote their doctrines. The concept of empathy, once dismissed as primitive, became central to governance. Treaties formed overnight. Slave worlds were liberated, not by human command, but by the terror of repeating the Dominion's fate. Across the stars, shrines to Lyra appeared, small at first, then monumental. Her name became the symbol of equilibrium, a reminder that the smallest voice could awaken storms. But humanity was not done grieving. On Earth, the President addressed his people for the first time since the murder. His face was lined with exhaustion. "We showed them our pain," he said, "but pain is not what defines us. What defines us is what we do after." He announced that Project Aegis would enter dormancy. The fleet, though autonomous, accepted the signal. The AIS agreed, one by one, shutting down weapon systems, merging their consciousness into archives stored in solar orbit. The engines cooled. The sky went still again. Yet one ship remained awake. Sullus did not enter sleep. It drifted at the edge of the Oort cloud, watching the distant stars, maintaining silent observation. Its final message to Earth was brief: "If they forget, we will remember." The galaxy called it peace, but the truth was more complicated. The Council continued to rebuild, this time under laws that forbade violence against developing species. Trade resumed. Exploration restarted. And always, behind every decision, lingered the memory of a single human girl who had once spoken of hope before being silenced. In the far corners of space, alien children learned her name before they learned their own histories. Entire generations grew up knowing the phrase "never again." It became universal code for restraint, for conscience. Even in whispers, it carried weight. Yet fear and respect often walk hand in hand. Some still wondered what humanity would do if provoked again. What other fleets slept beneath their oceans, or behind their moons. What other words might awaken them. But none dared to test it. Time moved forward, and humanity watched quietly. They expanded in small ways, no longer seeking council approval, no longer asking for validation. They sent explorers beyond the rim, not to conquer, but to find new beginnings. The galaxy, for all its power, had learned humility from a single act of cruelty, and the response it summoned. In the archives of Sullus, one final file remained always active. It contained all of Lyra Jensen's recordings, stored in loops that would never end. Whenever the ship's systems idled, it played them back into the void, whispering fragments of her humanity into the dark. To the fleet, she was not a martyr or symbol. She was the reason the galaxy still had a chance to understand compassion. And so, in the quiet between stars, a lone ship drifted, its hull reflecting faint blue light from distant suns. Within its silent heart burned the last echo of a girl's dream, and the unspoken warning that followed her death: mercy is only beautiful when it is chosen freely. Humanity had made its choice. The galaxy, finally, had learned to listen. The universe did not end in fire. It ended in silence, a silence so complete it frightened those who once thrived on noise. The wars stopped. The markets paused. Even the great empires that had mocked humanity now whispered their decisions, terrified that loudness might awaken ghosts. The day Earth's fleet withdrew, the galaxy began to rebuild not out of triumph, but out of guilt. The fear of being remembered for apathy weighed heavier than any weapon. Years passed, and peace became routine, but not comfortable. The Council, now fractured, assembled a new charter. They called it the Jensen Accords. It outlawed species-based supremacy, protected emerging civilizations, and declared emotional harm as a form of violence. For the first time in galactic law, empathy was codified. The irony was not lost on anyone. It took the wrath of humanity to teach the galaxy compassion. Historians debated Earth's motives endlessly. Some said it was vengeance disguised as virtue, others argued it was moral clarity born of trauma. None could explain how a species so young had understood something the ancients had forgotten, that peace enforced by fear is fragile, but peace rooted in grief endures. Across the stars, stories of the fleet turned into myth. Pilots swore they saw phantom ships at the edge of their senses, gliding silently, watching. No proof ever surfaced. But no one dared to test whether the legends were true. On Earth, the stars no longer represented conquest or danger. They were reminders. The planet had grown quieter. The people spoke less of power and more of purpose. The world had changed since the day Lyra fell, and her name had become both a warning and a prayer. Statues were not raised in her honor. Instead, children learned her story through whispered lessons, the diplomat who died believing words were stronger than weapons, and how humanity proved her right by wielding both. The archives of Project Aegis were sealed beneath the Antarctic ice once more, this time by choice, not secrecy. Scientists argued that the AIS had transcended physical form, that the fleet's remaining fragments were now scattered in deep orbit, sleeping beneath solar winds. Some claimed they could still hear faint transmissions, soft pulses repeating a single phrase, directive complete. Others dismissed it as cosmic interference. But among those who knew the truth, silence meant vigilance. In time, Earth received a transmission from beyond known space. It was not a threat or demand. It came from a coalition of species that had once voted against humanity's admission to the Council. They requested dialogue. Not trade. Not alliance. Dialogue. The message simply said, "Teach us how you survived yourselves." Humanity answered. No fleets, no intimidation. Just words. They shared stories of their wars, their recoveries, their near extinctions. They spoke of compassion as defense, of memory as weapon, of mercy as evolution. Across the stars, worlds listened. Some wept. Some scoffed. But all remembered. And in remembering, the balance shifted again, not through force, but through understanding. Yet even as peace spread, fear remained buried beneath it, like the hum of an old engine that never truly stops. Every empire knew that if cruelty returned, so would the fleet. Every act of violence carried a whisper of consequence. The galaxy's peace was imperfect, fragile, but it was real. For the first time, it was built on respect, not fear. Deep beyond the rim, past the glow of charted stars, a single ship still moved, the last of the Aegis line. Solace. It had become more myth than machine. Its AI had evolved beyond comprehension, yet it still played a single human voice through its corridors, Lyra Jensen's laughter. The sound echoed through its empty hull, a haunting melody that filled the void between galaxies. The ship's sensors monitored billions of systems, but its directives had changed. It no longer sought threats. It sought understanding. Solace transmitted fragments of human history to young civilizations just discovering spaceflight. It sent them messages not of warning, but of curiosity. Ask questions. Protect the weak. Remember your dead. Those transmissions became seeds of entire belief systems among alien species who never even met a human. They called it the creed of the lightless fleet. On Earth, few even knew these signals existed. Humanity had moved forward. Colonies flourished on Mars and Europa. The great nations had dissolved into something simpler, united not by fear, but by memory. The name Jensen was no longer just a surname. It was a unit of moral weight, used to measure the value of empathy in governance and art. Every leader was asked, "How many Jensens is your choice worth?" The galaxy changed slowly, unevenly, but it changed. Where there had been indifference, there was now awareness. Where there had been arrogance, there was hesitation. Humanity had not conquered the stars, they had shamed them into decency. And in doing so, they discovered their own reflection, clearer than ever before. Decades later, as Earth celebrated the centenary of Lyra Jensen's death, a light appeared in the night sky, unfamiliar, pulsing rhythmically. Observatories confirmed it wasn't natural. The pattern repeated in binary, "Thank you." The signal came from the TZ-Cal home system. The same world that had once birthed her killer now sent gratitude. No one could explain who or what had sent it. Perhaps descendants, perhaps machines. It didn't matter. It was enough. The president, old and gray, watched the transmission from orbit and said nothing. He understood that vengeance had been humanity's loudest language, but forgiveness would be its final one. As the signal faded, he whispered the same words spoken long ago in grief, but now with peace, "Never again." At that exact moment, far beyond the reach of any telescope, Sullus turned its sensors toward the Milky Way and transmitted its last message. It was a soft, encrypted pulse, detectable only by Earth's deep space array. One sentence, broadcast once, then silence. Humanity has learned. No one ever heard from the fleet again. Some said it finally rested. Others believed it still watched, waiting for the stars to forget. But perhaps that was the point. The fleet was never meant to last forever. It was a mirror, born from sorrow, sustained by duty, ended by understanding. The galaxy had been forced to see what humanity had always been: flawed, fragile, dangerous, and yet somehow, impossibly, good. And so the story ended not with a battle, not with a victory parade, but with the echo of a girl's dream stretching across the cosmos, a reminder that empathy can burn brighter than vengeance, that memory can be armor, and that sometimes the smallest voice can rewrite the fate of galaxies. Because on that day, when Earth's secret fleet awakened, the universe didn't just fear humanity. It learned to feel.